Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Dice and Brushes. I have another episode of a kind of unbagging, unboxing, whichever you'd prefer to say, of the latest section. I don't really want to say issue, but uh, bulk issues of Warhammer Imperium. We have from 8, we have 9, we have 10, we have 11, and we have a few other things here. One of which I'm more excited to talk about on the extras part than anything else. So, we're just going to get right into things. First off, with issue number 8, pardon me. We're getting 6 more dice here. It's a little bright there. Doesn't really show up with the bag. We have a Necron Overlord with Void Scythe and Resurrection Orb. This is the full, I believe it's a $30 or $35 kit. I forget off the top of my head. But if you are trying to start Necrons and you're going to want to have at least one of these, if you can find it, try to find issue number 8 because this is $14 instead. I don't care what kind of 10 or 20% discount you get at your local game store, this will be cheaper and they might actually have this issue for you. Sometimes you'll get it at a bookstore instead, but this is definitely a much better deal than you would get normally from GW. And this Void Scythe, it's strength times 2 on a strength 5 model already. AP minus 4, which is great against any kind of Space Marines or anything with the new Armor of Contempt rule, and is already flat damage 3, which makes it one of the very few melee weapons that you can get relatively cheaply for that damage profile. And then let's go into the magazine itself. So we got some fluff on the Overlord, how to name him, just for maybe you're doing a campaign. This is a great way to do it. How to build him, what base he's on, how to paint him with what paints have been already provided to you via the magazine. And it also updates kind of with all the other paints that have been provided through the magazine. One way that you can continue to paint the other Necrons that have been included so far. The Warriors, the Warden, the Skopek Destroyers, etc. So you see some white. And then, of course, we go into the mission. In this case, it's an Overlord versus 3 Primaris Aggressors that were in the previous issues. And it kind of just helps, especially new players, and even some of us veteran players, understand a little bit better of how some of these mechanics are supposed to work on your movement, your charging, your overwatch, shooting, etc. So it's a little bit more complete than what some of the other playthrough or missions have been. But I'm very satisfied with this particular issue for my Necrons because that is a relatively cheap Overlord with very good weaponry and equipment, especially with that Resurrection Orb. Then we're going to kind of combine issues 9 and 10 a little bit together, because with both of these, we have Necron Warriors. The traditional Necron Warrior box is split in these 2 issues. So the first one in issue number 9 is going to give you 4 Warriors and 2 Scarabs. Move those out of the way. And of course, you'll have the normal, here's some fluff, here's some little bit information, especially about the different parts of their symbolisms. Some fluff there. A little bit about the Space Marines, especially the Ultramarines there. We got, I was going to say information, fluff about the Psychers in 40k. Especially if you are new to 40k, this is particularly good. I do like how they introduce Psychers in this issue. Some little bit more about the Necrons. And of course, how to assemble the difference between a Gauss Flare Warrior and a Gauss Reaper. It doesn't seem like much to some of us veteran players, but to newer players, I can definitely see where they might get confused between the two. And so it is nice for them to have a good, better idea. And then in the mission, it goes over Primaris Lieutenant and Primaris Captain versus the Overlord and the Royal Warden, which is kind of nice. In fact, over here, it does have their stat lines. It doesn't go into details like the living metal, etc., but it is very nice for new players just to learn the rough basics. Of course, it doesn't have chapter tactics or anything like that. It goes over a few samples. And then part of that, what I'm liking here, is this last little section, which is sort of disconnected. Chapter organization of Space Marines who are, of course, Codex compliant. Got a nice art spread for newer players here and returning. So that one is pretty nice on the fluff there. I'm very satisfied with this particular. I want to say two actually, two issues, especially since I love my Necron Warriors. I cannot deny. And the issue number 10 comes with 6 of the Necron Warriors and 1 of the Scarabs, so that completes the Necron Warrior box. Yep, if I can get that base out of there, that'd be nice. And again, just have a quick look at the sprue here. Oops. There is no change between this and the regular sprue that I could see on the Indomitus set. So, personally, I'm going to be taking those 10 Necron Warriors. I'm going to arm them all with the Gauss Reapers and put them in my new Ghost Arc, just to help kind of supplement some of my firepower. Issue number 10, again, we have the same thing, a little bit of fluff. This time, especially on weapons, to help, again, new players especially be able to identify them, because when you're just coming in here in this hobby, you might not understand, oh, hey, what is that? What is that? But having a picture and a name right next to it, very nice. And it's something that I find some of the newer books are getting better at for identifying for newer players, especially like the Volkite Charger over here. Because some of the older books didn't always have the name next to the weapon, so you might not always know, if you were newer, what each weapon was. So I'm pretty happy about that. Again, we get in more painting with the various paints that have been provided, as well as for the, I can't say the name of it, the Saracen, I believe, dynasty, the one that the Silent King is part, I shouldn't say part of, that leads. Then we have another little tiny mini battle, just an example of Necron Warriors versus the Assault Intercessors from previous, but this time it shows some of the containers. The containers are not in any of these issues, however, they are probably going to be given soon. Again, we have data sheets, missions, some sample ways of using them. Again, this is geared for newer players learning, but even if you're a veteran player like myself, that's you might think you know it all, but every now and again you might catch yourself realizing, huh, that doesn't quite work the way I thought it did. And you never know. And you just can't have the don't assume you know everything, especially in 40k. You'll always find rules that you find you've been getting wrong or that you've misinterpreted. you can never just assume you know it all. Right? And for those of you who may have, some of you may have noticed a slight shift in the audio and the visual. Just some of my software acting finicky. I've basically had to restart another recording. But without ado, we will get further into this. So now in issue 11, we finally get a medium dry brush. This is very expensive from GW, so getting it for $13.95 plus what is again usually a $30 or $40 character model in the Phobos Librarian is much better than if you were to purchase them individually. And again, this is the regular Phobos. This is not a something made just for this kit. So this is the same thing you'll get if you buy it separately, which is always nice if you're looking, pardon me, for Space Marines. Then going into it, a little bit of lore on the Psychers, and it has some information about his camo cloak, the psychic hood, librarians for the Space Marines, some of the psychic disciplines and the lore, some of the Eldritch artifacts of the Necrons, goes over a little bit of them, staffs, war scythes, void weapons, hyperphase weapons, all the beautiful stuff that you get as part of a Necron army. And yes, I am biased for Necrons and against Space Marines. Of course, we got how to build your Phobos Librarian, how to paint that Phobos Librarian with the paints provided so far. They will, of course, have more paints, but you'll basically have to wait to finish some of these projects until after those are provided. And we have some Scarabs versus Librarian in this, along with the Royal Warden on this mission. And of course, we have their basic data sheets, not the full. A little bit of how to use psychic powers, things of that nature. And then finally, we get to what is probably one of my favorite parts, and that is we finally get a binder. I'm going to get my negative opinions out of the way. Number one, I wish that this had come in the first pack rather than, I believe this the third or fourth now. I forget off the top of my head. But I wish that we had this from the start to organize everything. Next, if you are a collector, you're probably not going to use this to store these magazines. Because one, you probably aren't going to take them out of the packs. And two, if you do, so that you can at least get the models out, you're probably going to keep them as each issue. With this encourages you to divide those issues up, just pull them apart. And like I've done here, how to collecting them, different sections from, I put mine issue by issue. So a little bit of collecting, a little bit of lore, because each one does have a tad bit. And then we have the tab that is dedicated just to the lore. Again, this is organized very neatly, which is a very good thing about this. There's some of my older issues of Space Marines, Tomb World, etc. Again, I have this issue by issue, section by section. Well, I should say section then issue, but you get the idea. So all of the how to builds are in the how to build section. So if you are going to completely go through the issues and you're not just collecting the issues just to have them, I'd say this is a very, very good way of organizing, and the magazines themselves are color-coded to these tabs. So the painting section, you may have noticed that all of your painting sections have been this tan or gold color. Every single one. And so it's, again, very, very nice. And of course, the play section is green. And again, you may have noticed that the little missions in here have been green. So overall, I really, really do like that we, at the very least, finally got the binder. For those of you who want to see the back end, here you go. I like the Necrons better, but that's just me. The other very negligible downside, very, very negligible, is the magazine that you got previously, as well as the two mission areas. There's really nowhere to fit these inside of that binder. I would have just liked to have it come with a sleeve for these. Unfortunately, there is not, and I'll probably just get my own. Like I said, it's a very, very small complaint there. Overall, I am very happy with this series of issues, especially being the Necron player. This puts me from having the Indominus box set, so that's 20 Necrons. This gives me another 10. I'm going to be trading the Space Marine stuff here to Brett, so he's going to be giving me those Necrons. So I'm going to have 50 Necron Warriors, plus the previous versions had 3 Necrons in them. So my 3 plus Brett's 3 brings me to 56 Necron Warriors, which is a really weird number. I do not know what issues they will complete that squad of 3 into at least a squad of 10. I do not know. But until then, again, I still say this is an excellent purchase. If you can even find just the single issues that you really want, and you're looking for Imperium, you're looking for Necrons, go ahead, buy them. These are awesome deals for what you are getting compared to normal GW prices, even with 10 or 20% discounts. But otherwise, I don't really have anything else to add. As we keep saying on Dice and Brushes, get your shit painted.